when we have a losing trade or a winning one, works in both ways, and they can both be negative. So when we have a losing or a winning trade, and we try to apply what we learned, because that's the goal, right? It's like if we lose, we want to see what we did wrong. That way we can apply that lesson to future trades. Now, the reason I say it can go for winning trades as well is because sometimes we'll have winning trades and we may have just gotten lucky, but we think we made the right call, so we apply that to future
Mm-hmm.
trades, and it's a detriment. You know what I mean? It doesn't help us because we were wrong. We just got lucky. So that's where the double edged sword kind of analogy comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean about overcompensating is like, say you take a trade and you lose, and you're like, oh well, I just didn't front run enough, or my stop was too tight. You know what I mean? And then you overcompensate by doing either of those things to a much larger degree, and it doesn't benefit you. It actually hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you want to make small adjustments, and you don't want to make multiple adjustments at once. Like if you took a trade and you think that you did two or three things wrong, but you have a strategy, like you have your plan that you follow, you don't want to go into the next trade or trades changing all three or two of those things, because if it
Mm-hmm.
works out, you won't know which one it was. If it doesn't, you still won't know. You know what I mean? So you always want to
Right.
change one thing and then sort that out. And then once you figure that out, if that was the thing, if the change you made is right or wrong, then you can move forward, and then you can work on the other two things. But changing too many things at once is can be a really bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as like the revenge trading,
Yeah.
like that's
Well, I don't want
ultimately
to say
about our.
revenge trading, but I think I mean, it could line up in the same category, but it's, you're expecting that move, so you keep trying to enter.
So that's
And
like that's I think that's partly FOMO and partly revenge
yeah,
trading. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's there's a blurry line in between the two. I mean, they're essentially the same thing, just in other directions. You know what I mean? But they they ultimately always produce the same end result, which is not good.
hmm,
You know, at the really negative times when that happens is when they work out, because then you go into future trades thinking, oh well, it worked last time, so it's going to work this time. Then you do even more, like you FOMO
hmm,
more, or you revenge trade more because you're so confident, because oh, it worked last time, or and the time before that, and the time before that, so I'm golden. And then you lose quadruple what you did the time before. You
hmm,
know what I mean? So
hmm.
that's what I mean about making small single changes and not overcompensating, like just easing into a thing. It's kind of like when you're driving down a road and something jumps out in front of your car. You don't want to snatch the wheel to the right or the left really hard, then you run off the road. So what you want to do is ease over and try to anticipate the best you can, but gradually move out of the way.
Right.
I kind of feel that it's a same thing, like essentially. So we've been talking about this for a while, right? Like month, probably probably a month, about a month and a half, I think, that I've been saying that this green line was the point in which we were really the most likely to hit, not close above for sure, and then dump. And then I was
Right.
like, the lows are the ones to watch to confirm that that was what it was. So the first one would have been here, and then the that was actually my entry. Oddly enough, right there.
That was a perfect entry for
Yeah,
yeah.
it was
Yeah.
pretty. It was pretty sweet. I'm pretty proud of that one. That was
I
nice.
entered that as well, which sucks, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The stops, and if I would have, and this is why I'm
Oh no, I
speak.
got profits on that, all
Yeah.
45%. Like
Hey,
when
profits
it
are
went to
profits,
like,
though.
yeah, but it went like, 12,000%, but it comes down to, do you understand the full, move?
Right, and that comes in with the higher time frames, right? Like, and I mean, ultimately, it's about balancing both of them together, of course, you know what I'm saying? Because while the higher time frames they do mean more, you can't really trade the way in which most people in this group trade without the
Hmm.
lower ones as well. They're equally as important. They're just not as weighted. They just don't have as much of a dramatic effect. So it's all
Right.
about like velocity and accuracy is the way I kind of think about it. So this low right here, these two little accumulation candles. I'll slide this out of the way. These two accumulation candles, right? Like that was the low. That was like the daily change of character. So as soon as that closed, like that was that was what had me interested. And then obviously I didn't enter on this time frame, but this was what I was looking for, you know.
Right.
And when it closed below this one, and especially this one, which is really
Hmm.
that's the main low of this move, that was what told me like, yeah, this thing's about to go
Break
downsies, you
down.
know, and
So
like so it did. Go ahead.
the I think that was the range. Was that 22.7? 22.7 could have held, right?
22.
Like that would have been like that would have been the last area to hold, correct? Like if you go
Well,
down to a lower time frame, like
yeah, but you can see it here though. You know what I mean?
okay.
Like the last one to there's two last ones I guess to hold, and I would say that they are this one, oops,
And
that
okay.
one, and this one. Those two areas are the ones that should have could have held it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And let's look at those on a 4 hour.
Mm.
So we look at those on the 4 hour, blew right through them. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And these are final points, but the ones that make more sense are obviously above those, right? But in here, the only one that I'm gonna go ahead and remove that guy. In here, the one that I would have been looking at if I was looking at this would have been the body of that. You know what I mean? And in this area, I was actually looking at this. This was one of my points that I was watching to see if this move was going to continue down and if I wanted to take profits and so on and so forth. And I did take profits. I closed like half my trade out here because of the fact that we had a daily trend and it was lining up with this level in here, which is on the 1 hour. So let's look at the 1 hour. Reset that. All right. So on the 1 hour, this was what I was looking at to be like a real, kind of final point,
Hmm.
and what what it was going to do in here was what, in my opinion, was going to determine if this thing was going to hold and move up or go down. And you can see that
That's where I got
built
shocked.
it built like a perfect range. And like when we look really close, like look at that 1 hour level on the 1 hour time frame.
Oh yeah.
It's not closing below it, so it was like this was what you really
That's
had to
what I kept trying to
watch.
long, bro. I was
Yeah.
like,
So, well, and see, but what you would have wanted to wait for, or for me personally, is I would have wanted to see on the same time frame it start to wick above at least,
okay.
or close, preferably close above these, and then I would get in on something in here if it did that. But you can
Okay.
see that it never really did, and even the wicks are very just like
Yeah.
gradual, like over this one, but none of them go above that one. It's just kind of a steady move down,
Right.
and then when it finally like hits that point for I mean it was beating on it for
It
hours,
was.
right?
It was.
And then that was when it was just like boom, see ya.
Yeah, I even messaged in the TWF. I was like, yeah, it looks like it's brewing up for a dump. And here I am
Yeah.
still trying to long it, you know?
Yeah, that's just being stubborn. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do that all the time, and it's I've gotten better at not doing it, but it's just I guess it's just something. It's like a natural part of things. It's something that
Hmm.
we work on right over time, and
Yeah.
we get better at it for sure. I trade a lot. Like most of my style of trading is intuitive, and it's what I'm good at. You know what I mean? Like I'm better at that. It feels better to me. I keep a strategy in mind, and I have some rules that I do follow, but I also leave a good chunk, percentage wise, of like my thought process open to intuition because it's the way that my brain personally works better. You know what I mean? Everybody's different. That's why they call it like a trading style. Like some people
Yeah.
are much
Mm.
better at like, hey, I want to have these 5 or 10 rules, and I'm only ever going to follow those. And I recommend it. I think it's great for most people. I've just found for me that I seem to do well trading with some rules, but a lot of intuition as well. And
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
recommend one or the other. I recommend that you find out which one is better for you. You know, I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
that's what really matters. But I do think that you need some rules in place. This area, these big bars, these big moves up, whether they be down. I mean, this is a perfect example right here. So this, and I'm using air quotes that you guys can't see, but dead zone is actually more aptly put, correctly put, rather, as an inefficiency.
Yep.
And essentially, what that means is that this is where the big dogs, the big money came in, right? The market makers. This is where they bought in, and they did so at multiple times in the past. You know what I'm saying? They did so in here. They were buying in, right? And they were bringing the price back down to fill the rest of their orders. At this point here, this little move in here, that was like a test to see like if they were ready to move this thing up, because at that point they had the money that they really wanted to get into the trade. And as soon as they saw this test succeed, that's when they really pumped in the rest of their order, and that's why it moved up so fast. And whenever an asset moves up so quickly with no bounces, so it's mainly a small amount of traders that are moving this thing up. They're a small amount of traders with a large amount of money, but it's still not a ton of traders, right? It's not the majority of people. The majority of people are doing all this, right? Back and forth, undecided kind of thing.
Mm.
Now, whenever this happens, you can almost always, not always right away, it may take months or even years to come back to it, but when it does hit this area, especially when it closes below things here on appropriate time frames, that's why you see these massive moves. And if you all, you can almost always find these. When you see one going up, there's going to be one in the future that is just as dramatic, almost exactly, that goes down. Now, this is essentially them selling and buying, and like it's the same thing we saw right here. This low, it came down really fast and then it
Hmm.
moved back up, right? They could be doing the same thing here. They could just be filling another part of their order, and
Hmm.
also on other accounts selling and buying as well. So they're making money in smaller trades, but they're also filling one massive trade, right? And they could
Hmm.
do this. They could do this for a year or two. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, you know, that's not the only way they're trading. They're taking all the stuff in here too, just depending on who they are and what are their objectives. But yeah, yeah man, think about charts like this. Think of them as like a fractal pattern. So you know, have you ever seen those ink blot charts
Ink
that they
blot?
use
No.
in? Well, they use them in like psychology, and they'll look like just a black like ink stain, and some of them
Hmm.
will look like a butterfly, and they don't really look like any one thing, but you can see a lot of things like a cloud. And then psychologists will ask a patient like, what do you see on this, you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Okay.
And it's essentially a mirrored image, so the left is exactly the same as the right. You'll see that in charts, and it can help you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna try to point some, and it's not one to one, it's not exact, but I'm just telling you, you'll see it. So it happens it happens kind of here. Like it comes down, comes back up, and then look, it comes down, and because it came up fast, it's because it came down fast here, and then it did the exact same. But then once it came below these, look, it did the exact same. It came back up fast, and it's these big open gaps in here, those inefficiencies. That's what
Mm-hmm.
causes this, and we can really tell what it's going to do long term by looking at the tops and the bottoms. Look at these tops: a high, a lower high, a lower high, and then here a low, an equal low, so a double bottom, so to speak. And then this one just wicks below it a little bit. Now, this one would be like, all right, well, it didn't close below. Now let's watch what it does to this one. And if it doesn't like even wick this, or especially close above it, that's where we're going to look for an entry for a short in here. You know what I mean? And then bam, that's where it's just like, yeah. So on my trade, I took, uh, obviously my entry was here on this yellow
Ugh,
line.
that line.
And
Ugh.
then, yeah, it was like, man,
I
it was,
had I believe it was a 4 or a daily inverse I had
mm-hmm.
marked there. I think I was trading ETH at the time. Yeah, it was. I have the chart in the trading with friends thing, but dude, perfect entry, high time frame, daily.
Yeah,
And that was the move.
that's 23.
That
It
was
was
the move.
23,550. That was my exact entry right there. Yeah. So right there. So that's where I got in, and I had my stop was like right above this little fella here. It was somewhere. It was somewhere in here. I can't remember if it was this one or this one. It was one of those two though. I had my stop above, and you can see like it obviously wasn't closing above that, and then bam, and then this was my take profit point, my first one. I had two. I took profits once, and then I closed out here. Um, I could have closed better, but I woke up and saw it, and I had some take profits like a little lower just in case, but I wanted to see. I had some alerts set, and I was just watching how it was reacting in here. And I had made enough, you know what I mean? Like I made 164% on this one, and like 420 or 450 or something percent on the rest of it. So I was like, I'm
Oh,
good. I'm
nice.
good at that point. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna
What
close
is
it
that R to
out.
R? It's
Uh,
25. Damn.
yeah, this one's 25 to
Good
point
job.
7, and that one was 9 to point 7.
Yeah, those, the trades where you could
Yeah,
just sit back and, let it develop are way less stressful than scalping.
yeah, yeah. Scalping's,
And, you're taking less trades, so you're risking less essentially,
mm,
especially if you have it, planned, like you actually have a trading plan. So,
yeah, and you can, you have more time rather to be with your family, and
yep.
do things for yourself, which is really important. I preach about all the time, but not a lot of people listen. You know what I mean? Because it's not as sexy as like hitting a level to the dollar. You know what I mean? Like I tell people like, oh yeah, I had this trade. I made 450%, and I entered literally to the dollar, and they're like, oh, tell me more. This is awesome. Da 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 da. But the moment I say something about like, you know, the mental game, like the psychology aspect, or balancing out things with your family and prioritizing your family and yourself, your health, you know what I'm saying? They're like, dude, that's stupid. Like, that's stupid. I don't want to hear that. I want to talk about the trade you hit to the dollar. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what people value. But
It
if you,
doesn't teach you
if,
anything.
no, and if you stick with
Marking a
it,
level and saying it hits, it doesn't teach you anything.
yeah, and as soon as you stick with it for a while, just like you're seeing now, you start to understand how important those other things are, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll never be your best. You'll never be your best for your in trading yourself or your family, especially if you ignore those things. So
Mm-hmm.
I preach them ad nauseum, but I always will. And people don't like it. I don't really care. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I know they're important, and I want to help myself and other people to the best of my ability. So I'm going to preach what I think is important. You know.